pivoting on to happiness, everyone's definition, perspective, way of feeling happy is different. I hear you quite loud and clear that your work clearly gives you a lot of sense of fulfillment and joy. What is happiness really for you in your life?
For me, I define happiness in this way, which is, look, when I look back at my life, maybe when I'm 60, 80, whatever, I want to measure my success by how many other people's lives have I touched by my existence. Now, it's a very complicated way, but it's actually a very simple thought. Right? How many people have benefited the world around because of things that I have done? Now, of course, the first and most important nucleus is your immediate family, right? Your immediate family, your friends, people around you, your teachers, so many people are there. And that's one. But we all have to, I believe, we have a moral responsibility to expand that, right? And so for me, the more I can expand that, it is greater happiness. Now, the day-to-day touch points of happiness will come with smaller things, right? That's probably family, something you celebrate, some vacation you take, or somebody giving you this anecdote, face to face that what you've done has helped them. But also, if I know that 250,000 students have taken courses, 90% of them have said it's impacted their career. That, I think, to me, in the long term, gives me meaning and happiness.
Good evening, everyone, and good morning to those who are listening to me in other shores of the world. Thank you very much for joining us on yet another episode of the Happiness Hour. I have with me today a very special friend and guest, Ashwin Damera. I will briefly like to introduce Ashwin. He is the Executive Director of Emeritus Institute of Management. He's passionate about making quality education accessible to the next generation of leaders across the world. At Emeritus, he focuses his efforts on university outreach and academic collaborations. Ashwin holds an MBA from Harvard Business School. So thank you, Ashwin, for joining us, and welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me, Ashu, and I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you. What prompted you to switch over into becoming an entrepreneur?
It's a great place to start. I'm actually an accidental entrepreneur. So, while I was applying to my business school, my plan was to, get into a good business school. I never imagined I would get into Harvard Business School. Then work for 3 to 5 years in, say, a consulting firm, pay back my loan, and then come back to India and figure out what to do, right? But very interesting is when I was at business school, I was rubbing shoulders with many of my classmates who had already started and sold companies or started and built companies before coming to business school. And their stories were fascinating. Also, like you mentioned, I got to intern for the CEO of JetBlue, Dave Barger. And I said, look, I want to be this person in the room. I want to be this person who's thinking of building great things, daring great dreams. And then actually, when I completed my MBA, I had a decision to make, Ashu, because I had an offer from McKinsey to work in their New York office. I had about 1 crore at those days of a student loan to pay off. Right? So this would have been the path that I was always, thinking of pursuing. But I had this opportunity of getting Travel Guru back in India and taking the entrepreneurial plunge. And ultimately, I think, our life, you can sum it up that there are about maybe 3 to 5 pivotal moments. And maybe it was because I was 27 then, maybe it was because of the peer support, maybe it's because I believe I always had a backup because I was now from HBS, etc. I decided to pursue the entrepreneurial path, right? If you ask me today, is that a big driver of my happiness? Absolutely. I can't imagine working in a large company or a bank. Well, I mean, look, no disservice to any industry or stuff, but the ability to be in control of your time, your destiny, to shape things is phenomenal. I didn't know it back then, but I did make an important decision. I think I took the right choice.
Awesome. And from Travel Guru to Emeritus, building a billion-dollar company has been remarkable. Can you share a little about that journey and what values or what is it that's really held you in good stead through this journey?
So when I started my first startup, Travel Guru, my intent was to create a very large business and a company. And we saw the ups and downs of a startup life, right? So in 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed. We were nearly acquired by Expedia. but that disappeared. We had 2 months of cash in the bank, and it was a very painful moment. We learned a lot. And then, after Travelocity acquired us, I said, look, 1 out of 100 startups perhaps becomes a large company. And so those are odds that you should not be betting against. And so one of the realizations I had, which I think has led to also me being kind of a little grounded and fulfilled in life, is to say, if I'm going to spend the next 10 years of my life doing something, it better be about something I'm passionate about. It cannot be that I'm starting up to create wealth for myself. That was a mistake I had made in my first experience with Travel Guru. But so therefore, I looked at healthcare, I looked at education. I believe these transform people's lives. Education, I think, had a more personal appeal to me. I come from a South Indian family where it was always stressed. I was the beneficiary of very good education. And so when I started Eruditus, Ashu, there was no dream or aspiration of becoming a unicorn or a billion-dollar company. We never even talked about it. We never even thought about it. But we were very passionate about bringing high-quality education to students across the world. By the way, in doing that, a lot of things have happened. And so one of the biggest learnings for me, which I like to share with people is, if you are going to become an entrepreneur, if you're going to start up, be focused on solving a problem that you deeply, passionately care about. What comes from that? It may be good, it may be bad, it may be ugly, who knows? But you will at least be happy in that journey because you are solving something and doing something that you cared about deeply.
So it really has to resonate with who you are rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Like, for example, if I was starting up in the crypto space or a gaming company or something else, look, you can create very large outcomes here. Yeah. But I don't think I would be happy, and I don't think I would do well because it doesn't fit with my value system and my skill sets.
Super. Thank you so much. Your company has made education accessible to many. What next? How do you see it? One is making it accessible. You've been doing a lot around this space. What next? How next?
What we're doing today is a drop in the ocean. Last 12 months, maybe 2.5 lakh students took some universities courses. We don't ourselves offer courses, we are a platform. But about 2.5 lakh students took courses through us. But that's a very small fraction of the adult learners across the world. My own view is no one player can solve the access problem of education, but we are playing our part. And to me, that itself is quite fulfilling. Look, you grow up in a country like India, you see the kind of dreams and aspirations that people have tied to education. Honestly, the IITs and the IIMs, they admit one of the lowest number of students, maybe 0.5%, 1%. Now, where does the rest of the 99% go? Maybe 5, 10 years in their career, right? So they need to upskill, they need to learn, they need to unlearn. Right? And so we believe that adult education space, upskilling, reskilling is a large area, which is going to get even more important in the years to come because the skill gaps that you face today are so large. My goal for the next 5 to 7 years is, can this 2.5 lakhs go to becoming, say, about 10 lakh students, about 1 million students in the next 5 to 7 years. The other thing I would also say is language is important. When we say access, yes, online is access, but language. So the fact that today about a quarter of our students are learning in Spanish, Portuguese, Mandarin, Arabic, Bahasa is something that we're thinking about now. And they're learning courses from an MIT or a Wharton or a Cambridge, right? And these are elite schools. I think that's a big part of what makes me excited. So can we increase that as well? Right? I mean, potentially it could be Hindi, it could be other languages. So these are some of the things that we still have to do. I still say that we are really early in our evolution, though it's been 13 years. There's so much to be done.
I remember sharing with you that I am one of your students. I did a course on, and it was only because it was accessible virtually to me that I did a course on digital strategy and marketing. And as an adult student, I don't think I could have gone to the university so easily or traveled for that short period of time. So thank you very much for bringing it to our homes as well. People like me who feel the need to upskill and sometimes just don't know how to do it.
When I hear stories like this, even if I'm getting it for the second time or the nth time, that you can't express how happy you feel. Because I go back to, this thing about you have to find purpose in that. You have to be in a startup where you care deeply about what you're doing, about the problems you're solving. To me, this is more important than, say, valuation and all of those. Yes, those are also important because they help you do this. But when you hear from real people that, hey, what you are doing is actually improving my life, right? That is meaning, that is fulfillment, right? And so that's why I come back to the earlier question you asked me. Every person has to find, look, for somebody else, it may be something else, right? For me, this is fulfillment in life. That is worth its weight in gold.
So I'll add to your fulfillment and joy here by telling you that the course not only empowered me to go onto social media, it even gave me the idea for my next project, which is the digital app. So it served in far more ways than I could have ever anticipated. So I'm pivoting on to happiness. Everyone's definition, perspective, way of feeling happy is different. I hear you quite loud and clear that your work clearly gives you a lot of sense of fulfillment and joy. What is happiness really for you in your life?
For me, I define happiness in this way, which is, look, when I look back at my life, maybe when I'm 60, 80, whatever, I want to measure my success by how many other people's lives have I touched by my existence. Now, it's a very complicated way, but it's actually a very simple thought. Right? How many people have benefited the world around because of things that I have done? Now, of course, the first and most important nucleus is your immediate family, right? Your immediate family, your friends, people around you, your teachers, so many people are there. And that's one. But we all have to, I believe, we have a moral responsibility to expand that, right? And so for me, the more I can expand that, it is greater happiness. Now, the day-to-day touch points of happiness will come with smaller things, right? That's probably family, something you celebrate, some vacation you take, or somebody giving you this anecdote, face to face that what you've done has helped them. But also, if I know that 250,000 students have taken courses, 90% of them have said it's impacted their career. That I think to me in the long term gives me meaning and happiness, right? So that is how I think about it. And but at the same time, it's not family or work, right? For me, I'm very clear it has to be both. And if I have to choose, I'll choose family, right? Because that is my most immediate nucleus. And so for me, it's always family first. There's a debate that's going on about the 70-hour work week and all of that.
Yeah, I know.
My view on that is, look, I'd rather work 30 hours, 40 hours and spend an extra 10 hours with family than try to maximize my career and other things, because that's how I define happiness. Now, in different stages of my life, it's different. In the stage that I am, I have 2 kids, I have a family that I think is very warm, welcoming, and I think that I would love to, spend more time with them. So for me, it's a balance between that and expanding the nucleus of lives I touch. Right? That is how I think about happiness.
So you brought about an interesting point about the 70-hour week and work-life balance. I too have, I really get that when you're saying that 30 hours is clearly can be, in fact, it can equal to the 70 hours. It all depends with what focus and creativity you work. It's not about the quantity of work. It's more often the quality of work. And over the years, I've found that some slowing down and being balanced makes me churn out far superior work than just getting into this race and machine-like operation. How do you really keep that balance? What is it that helps you stay balanced in your life between family first, I get that, and your work?
Yeah, you have to be very focused on what you do, but even more focused on what you say no to. When people say I don't have time, it basically means this is not priority. If like for example, I'm somebody who likes to read a bit, or more importantly, likes to meditate twice a day. Now, if somebody says, "Oh, Ashwin, you're able to do it, but I don't have time," it really means this is not priority for you. But to make time for that, it means I have to deprioritize many other things, right? So, for example, I don't watch, a lot of TV, right? I don't go to many social events or parties. Sometimes it's a little inconvenient, especially for my wife, because I'm rarely seen. Sometimes people have said I'm like the Yeti, right? This is an animal that everybody's heard of, but nobody's seen. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I'd rather be tucking my kids into bed or reading a book or spending more time meditating. So you have to first and foremost, I find, your balance of where you want to spend your time. As an entrepreneur, time is very fluid, meaning, look, I could be working on a Saturday and I could be free on a Monday. It's not a Monday to Friday, it's not a 9 a.m. to a 6 p.m. or whatever that is. And so you have to be very flexible with that. But time means priority, Ashu. And I am very clear what is priority for me and what is not. And if it's not in the priority list, I have no qualms in saying sorry, but I won't turn up for this.
You talked about a lot of clarity and this whole need for acceptance of FOMO that the generation suffers from. People feel the need to be visible, the need to be everywhere, the need to know it all. Any tips on how they can cope with this whole pressure that they face in their peers?
No, look, pressure is between our ears. Let's not blame peers. I know we can, but
Yeah.
ultimately, if you put two people in the same situation and give them the same pressure, they will react differently. And they will react differently because the filter with which they view these inputs are different, right? And their vasanas or their tendencies in which they react are also different, right? So, look, if you believe partying and socializing is priority for you, go for it. There's nothing wrong with it. But then you have to remove something else. It's like a jar. You have a certain amount of marbles you can put in. If you want to put something in, something has to come out. What people do is sleep less, don't exercise and all of that. Those are unhealthy habits, right? So look, you can be very comfortable with choices you make. Make it your choices, make it about you. Peer pressure, all of this, I don't know, it's somehow never had a big influence on me, but be able to kind of push that away. Be who you are. If that means some friends of yours don't appreciate who you are, that's fine. That's their choice.
You talked about meditation, reading, spending time with family. What else really, what are the kind of practices that you follow to stay really anchored in yourself and live with this level of balance and clarity?
So, Ashu, we all in life, we can live life one of two ways. Okay. One way is kind of, think of the ECG monitor, right? It goes up and down, up and down. So, very happy today because I was on vacation. Oh, my boss said something bad, it's down. Or my kid did well in their exam, great. Oh, my teacher called me and said my kid is falling behind. So, we have this ups and downs of life, and that is the nature of life. Ups and downs, which we say dwandas, right? Now, if you choose to live that way, great, but you'll be ready for the knocks and shocks of life. Happiness and sadness will be part of your day to day existence. The other way to live life is a little more balanced, which means you may not have the great highs, you won't have the great lows. You have a little bit. If you're human, there's going to be a little bit, but it's kind of a little predictable, it's safe. That's the path that I believe I want to live, right? That's the kind of life I want to live. So meditation, I think, helps you a lot, helps me a lot. Because if you start your day with that, the first thing it puts into balance is, look, dude, how much ever you think you are what you are, 90% of what happens in your life is actually not in your control. There was a beautiful, so the philosophy building at Harvard Yard had a saying by Emerson, which said, what is man that thou art mindful of him? What is man that thou art mindful of him? Meaning, who are you that you care so much about yourself? So when you start your day with that mindset, which is what meditation in many ways does, then your whole day is balanced because something happens, you accept it. Something doesn't happen, you accept it. And so you straight away, instead of going through these yo's, and by the way, as an entrepreneur, you have rejections, you have ups and downs every day. So instead of having the yo, you start to balance. Family time, family also balances. You can be talking at a big event and everybody applauded your thing, you come back home, your family will remind you you're late by 5 minutes. Hey, you didn't do this. So it grounds you. And the reverse, when you're down, when you're beaten up, the whole world thinks that your business is useless. Your family reminds you that you're special to them. So again, it's the balancing mechanism, right? So you find the reading perspective. I mean, when you read, you get perspective. A lot of what I'm telling you today is what I've read or experienced through other people's journeys. I tell my kids, you don't have to go through every experience yourself. The smartest person is somebody who learns from other people's experiences. Reading gives you that. So these are all ways I have used. Again, I say all this with humility that this is my system. I'm not preaching to anybody. That allows me to lead a more balanced life without these massive ups and downs, which I believe leads to better happiness for me.
I've seen you passionate about sports in the building. Is it something you've pursued since your younger days, or is it a habit cultivated later? What role does it really play in your, again, that whole balancing space?
So two things. One is team sports. Again, when you're playing sports, you forget about everything else. You're in that moment, in that space. Team sports is great fun. I played cricket for my state way back when I was much, much younger. So that continues to be a passion. But one thing I also want to just say is just because I want a balanced life, it doesn't mean that I'm not aggressive. It's not doesn't mean that I'm not ambitious. I like to say this, which is my mantra, is be outwardly be extremely ambitious, but inwardly be extremely modest. Right? Or saying it differently, work very hard. Like if you're playing a game, I play to win. Right? But I also know that winning and losing is not completely in my hands. So if I win, I'm not super excited. If I lose, I'm not super depressed. But I'm playing my best, right? And so you can balance the both. And sports, honestly, it is fun. It's also good exercise, and it's something that again, it's one of the things that I prioritize. So weekends, for example, I want to make sure I'm not taking any more meetings. That I am getting the time to play the sports with the people I want.
What advice would you like to give to aspiring leaders on their journey to entrepreneurship, or even happiness? Because I think somewhere the two are tied, because we are all entrepreneurs of life in a way. Expressing it through a business or whatever we do is one part of it, and there's a lot more to life.
So, advice maybe rich coming from me, but I'll share something that I think has been useful as a framework. We must always live our lives in this framework of box one, box two, and box three. Box one is what we're doing today. So even for a business, right? So it's our business today. It's how we live life today, right? For example, in my company, it's online courses, working with universities. Box three is about how we see the future, where we want to be 5, 10 years from now. But what do we do today to make that happen? Right? So, for example, it could be create a AR VR experience, or it could be in 10 other languages, or could be teaching medical education. That's not what we do today, but how do we run some experiments for that to happen? And box two is forgetting the past, like challenging assumptions. Right? So, for example, when we started, we were India, we were classroom. We had to challenge that assumption. When 2 years back before COVID, we had offices. Today we are 100% virtual. So we have to challenge this assumption that we can only work within office. Every one of us has to apply this even to our personal lives. We're doing something well, great. But what do I need to do to get to where I want to be 3 years or 5 years from now? Right? What habit of something of mine do I need to kind of get rid of, forget? That's box two. So having that perspective, box one, box two, box three, in business or entrepreneurship, but also in our personal lives, I think is very, very important. That's one thing that I would want to say. For entrepreneurs specifically, or even others in leadership, one thing that I'll say is we learn best when we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. And if you're a young person, say in your early or mid 20s, try and find those experiences where you're putting yourself in a difficult or a different situation. Maybe you're working in a foreign country. Or for me, for example, when I was in business school, the fact that I worked for JetBlue, which was an airline, like why was I working and interning for the CEO of an airline? I didn't get paid for it. It was but I learned so much. Or leaving the McKinsey offer and starting Travel Guru, that set me up for success later. So try and early in your career, not later in your career, it gets tougher, but early in your career, try and find those pivotal experiences. You learn so much from that. And I think that will stay with you, and define your character and your purpose as you go.
So here it brings me to a question which I'm a little curious about. You said, box two is shedding or imbibing. It's shedding old habits, imbibing. Has there been any anecdote about something that you really felt you needed to shed or you needed to imbibe in your personal or professional life?
So in my personal life, I can say that I tend to see the world as black and white. And therefore, I tend to be a little more judgmental about people, right? My box two, therefore, is to start seeing the world a little bit more as gray. Right? And that is my box two. I have to forget that, hey, I'm seeing this in this perspective. But that doesn't mean the other person is seeing it in that same perspective. So I have to forget that this is a black and white problem. I have to accept that it is a perhaps gray. In the business side, when we started Ashu, we were an Indian company. It was classroom programs. Today we have 300 people in Mexico, 50 people in China. So I had to start understanding I'm not a leader of an Indian business. I'm a leader of a global business. What does that mean? How do I make that happen? How do I make Robert in China, right, feel as included as Charlie in the US and as included Ade in the Middle East? And sometimes the days like, periods like this where you have geopolitical conflicts, you have to take everybody along, right? And so the box two is say, okay, how do I think, act, and behave like a global leader? The classic example, by the way, I'll give you for box one, box two, box three is high jump. So it used to be to high jump, you would have to run, jump off your legs, and clear the hurdle. That's called the hurdling motion. You can reach about 3 meters if you did it. Today, the way people do the high jump is they run, they turn, and the head lifts off and crosses the hurdle first. And then they land on their body. So instead of jumping with your 2 feet first, you actually jump with your head first. Nobody could have imagined this, right? And so the box three was that you actually jumped with your head first. But the box two there was to forget that high jump means jump off your legs, right? And so if you had, however much you train, and if you jump with your box one attitude, you would only hit 3 meters. Today they're hitting 3.8 meters with the box three idea, right? And so look, this is an easy example for people to understand, but in our lives, we all have box one, which we have to be good at. Look, 60-70% of your time you have to do box one because that's your day job or that's your life that you're doing. So 20% think about box three. And maybe 10-15% you think about what do I declutter in my life? What assumptions am I making about life in general that I must now rethink? And every year, doing this reassessing, I think, is something that every individual should do.
So, any pivotal or really profound incident or moment or philosophy that has shaped your life?
Many moments. I remember when we had started Emeritus, in about 2016, 2017, actually, we were fundraising. And we were about a $10 million company, profitable. We had not raised, we had built a company over 7 years that was profitable, raised no external capital. And we went to the usual early stage VCs in Bangalore and other places. And we got rejected by 20 of them. And literally everybody we spoke to, even Bertelsmann, which later invested in us, first said no. And in fact, one person even asked me, are you a promoter or are you an entrepreneur? I said, what is the difference? So you're a promoter, you're profitable, you've not diluted any equity stake, you're growing at 30% and you're happy, so you're a promoter. And that led us to really think about who we are, what we want to do. We debunked that idea that we are a promoter. It did make me, I would say, it pushed me to say, hey, one day I want to go back to this individual and tell them, hey, look, you can build a large company, but you can also do it the right way. So that was a moment that I would say, so, many times rejection teaches us a lot. And many times it motivates us a lot as well. So that's one example. Look, like I said, when I sold Travel Guru, we had spent 5-6 years building that company. Our exit wasn't a great exit. We were nearly acquired by Expedia. Lehman Brothers collapsed. We were acquired for about a fifth of the price that Expedia was going to pay. But that was a great experience. Again, it's like rejection or, people say it's failure. I actually don't think it's failure. I think it's learning. But it taught me a lot about, how you actually build a business, right? You got to make it sustainable. That was again a pivotal moment. It was also a pivotal moment, Ashu, because it told me, don't build a business looking at the financial outcomes. That should be an outcome of what you build. But build a business because you care about that specific problem. So, there are many more. I won't bore you with all of them. These are some that, have stuck up.
No, thank you so much, Ashwin. Whether it's living a life of purpose, living a life of balance, and most importantly, a person who's very reflective and keeps on learning, growing. If what's really striking out at me is that you don't stop yourself any moment from challenging yourself, your own boundaries, more than your, and that's what really works in your business as well. Really appreciate your sharing with such candor. Thank you very much for joining us here today and your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.